G'day, Mr. Fitz here. Hope you're going well. Video 5, we're going to introduce you to the Revolve Boss Base feature. This is really useful for allowing us to create geometry that is circular in nature and has a lot of applications that are really useful. We're going to do some adding, removing solids and some modifications in here as well. Back to our model workflow. Thus far, we've looked at sketching and building extrusions, both solid and cut. This feature here is going to be the Revolve Boss Base. So it's a standard solid feature that's really useful, and it has an equivalent called Revolve Cut. So this is adding revolved information, this is cutting revolved information. And as always, it's dependent on a sketch to create it. If I have a look at the design that we're hoping to build, this is the one I showed on the first screen. With your current knowledge of CAD, you could do this by using the extrude boss command, where you would create a sketch of a circle, you'd extrude to here, create another sketch and then extrude to there, sketch and extrude to here, then you could sketch on this face and cut down to there. That would take you 4 features in your tree to create. Revolve tool is really compact and useful because you can do all of those in one and get better control of your part. So let's create a new file. Let's do it from scratch. Part, okay. As always, best to save your work straight away. And we're going to start with a sketch. Doesn't matter which plane you choose, but I'm going to choose the right plane. And let's start with drawing some lines. So I'm just going to draw this fairly rough. Again, I don't typically tend to bother about the scale just yet. I'll add in that information later. So from the center, I'm going to create a line here. Then I'm going to do a little jog in the part. This is roughly how I want this thing to look. I'm going to go back down to here and then back to the center. I'm still in the line tool. You can see my icon looks like a line. Press escape to get out of that. That's roughly what I want this thing to look like. You can always grab it and move it. As long as it's blue, it's editable. Now I'm going to start by putting in some dimensions. So I'm going to do an overall. So if I click on this line and this line, drag this out here, 145, I'm going to make this 120. Now what can happen here is you can see that as that's pulled it back, I've drawn this thing a little bit large. So if I press escape to get out of the dimension constraint, I can just reshuffle these lines a little bit. So grab it and drag it, make it back closer to how I want this thing to look, like that and that. Cool. Now I can add a few more dimensions. I want this here to be 10 millimeters. I want from here to here to be 60. So click between the lines, enter the value, click OK. All right. Now I'm going to show you a clever little feature here. The next thing I want to define is this is going to be a circular feature. So I want to define the diameter of my part. So I'm actually just going to drag this down a bit. It's looking a little big. Okay, now what I'm going to add in here is I'm going to draw a center line through this part. Now, if I click on the line here, next to it, there's a little arrow. I can draw a center line, which I'm going to draw from this point and just drag it out into space. Make sure it's horizontal and click again and press escape to get out of that command. Now, this is going to act as a center line. I'll show you how it works. If I go to dimension, now I'm going to set the outside dimension. So I'm going to go from that line to this line as my center. You can see that there would give me what's called the radius of my part, but I want the diameter. So click again, and I'm going to give this a diameter of 120. You'll see that shifts it down, so I need to do a little bit of tuning. Press escape. Let's just shuffle this down a little bit. Move this down. That looks better. Now what I actually want in my design here is I want this section here, which is my wall section of my part, to be consistent. I want it all to be 10 millimeters. One thing I can do, you can always add in some construction geometry. So if I go back to center line, or I'll just use line. I'm going to draw a line from here to here. Press escape. I'm going to draw another line from here to here. Make sure it's horizontal. So these two lines here, I'm going to use them as construction lines. So if I click on that one, make it construction, click on this one, make it construction, you'll see that it's now a dashed line, just as this one here is. Now what I can do here is I can make these equal. So if I click on that one, press and hold the control key on your keyboard, this one, and again hold control and click on this one. Now all three are selected. I can go equal. And that'll make all those there 10 millimeters all the way through. So if I change that 10 to say 15, that'll all update all the way through. It makes it fairly intelligent. Okay, a couple more dimensions. I'm going to define this one to here. So I want this to be 50 diameter. And I want from here to here, drag down there, that's going to be 60. All right, have a closer look at that. That now is all black. So that's all fully defined. Press escape to get out of the dimension tool. And that there is what we call a quarter section profile. Let's turn this into a revolved feature. So finish your sketch. Okay, so with that sketch selected, I'm going to go features, revolve boss base. Now the way this tool works, all I need to define are two things. The axis of revolution, so that is going to be the center of my rotation of my solid. In this case, I'm going to choose my center line. I can equally choose that line because it's on the center. If I click on that, it's going to spin that sketch all the way around that axis to create a solid. Now, the only other bit of information is I can change the angle. So 360 means it will go all the way around it. Equally, I could make that less. I could make it 180. See what happens there. It'll do it halfway. But in my case, I want it to go all the way around 360 and click on OK. There we go. There's my design. So one feature, revolve, all the information's in there. If I expand the revolve, you see the sketches inside it. That's the defining sketch that I just built. You can right click and go edit sketch. And again, this is all modifiable. So if I want to change that 15 back to 10, I've changed my mind. 10 millimeters. You'll see that that whole wall section changes. Okay, done. Finished. There's my part. Likewise, you can do things to it after. You can add in some fillets or some chamfers. I'm going to add a little chamfer to the end of this part. So I might pick that corner there. And I want this chamfer to be 5 millimeters. So there's different options in the chamfer tool. Some are quite complex, but I'm just going to do a basic chamfer. 5 millimeters, 45 degrees is the default, and go OK. That's going to chamfer that edge on there. Good practice when you're doing a revolve. If you wanted to do a design that has those chamfered edges, I suggest doing the chamfers or the fillets as a secondary feature on the end here, because you'll find that trying to do it in the sketch adds more complexity. So I can do that. I'll show you how that works. If I draw a line across here, just right click on escape. Now I'm going to dimension it. So if I click to put in an angle dimension, I click on the line that I want to measure, does dimension, and then another line that's parallel or an angle to it, so this one here, and then you can drag this out. So click on the line you want to angle to another reference line, then drag it out. So this is 45. So 45, and then the only other bit of information is how far out it is. So if I went from this line to that point, it's going to be 5 millimeters. And that'll allow me to do the chamfer. Now the problem I've got here is that this information's still got these edges on it, so I can actually cut those off. So if I go to the trim entities tool here, I can do a clever little thing here with the power trim. The way this works is if you click anywhere in space, you see how it draws a little line. Wherever that line crosses, it's going to cut it away to the nearest entity. So for example, if I go here, it's going to cut that line back to the chamfer, and there again, it's going to cut those back like that. So clever little tool, trim entities, trim, okay, and then I can finish that. You see it updates the profile, okay, and it's going to cut that chamfer. You notice here that this is now an error. The chamfer that was there was relying on the edge being there. That's no longer there. I've cut it away, so I can right click and delete that chamfer. Ask me confirm, yes, get rid of it, and that chamfer is now gone and is part of that sketch. So I can right click, edit sketch, change those dimensions if I want to. This gets messy if you put in lots of chamfers in the sketches or fillets. I try to keep my sketches as simple as possible. So wherever you can use the fillet or the chamfer tool, add those in later. Don't try to do them at the start. Keep it simple. Cool. That's enough of this tutorial. That's the Revolve tool. I did mention at the start that you can also use Revolve Cut, this one here. This works very much the same, except you can only use this feature once you have a solid in there to cut. So you might want to cut away from this feature, and we can do that in another tutorial as we go. Cool, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.